Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you this hour by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. It is a very busy NFL week, by the way. Most of the teams are doing their mandatories. The Eagles, of course, opted out of the mandatories, instead trading off to have them come in last week to kind of do these 7-on-7 stuff. So they basically said, look, come in for more days and we won't make you do the mandatories. A lot of teams right now, they are doing their mandatories. So there's a lot going on. We're going to see if Aaron Rodgers decides to show up. We're going to see a lot of stories around the league. This week is a very, very busy NFL week. We'll have that covered for you here during Football 4. We got a lot of Eagles stuff today. We got a lot of other stuff. Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com is going to join us to break down some of the things. Now that the Eagles are done here, but let me start with that, Andrew. Would you have liked to, like the way the Eagles handled this with the mandatories, they decided not to do that, would you have made the little deal that the Eagles coaching staff decided to do with the players, or would you have rather seen them, try to get those players to do the mandatory here and get these extra days in?
Well, I think it shows Nick Sirianni's emotional intelligence, being able to gauge this team and get their perspective on things and weigh his options. And I think that's really going to go a long way in building a relationship with his players and kind of giving them that option, that variety of what to do. So I think it's ultimately a good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because the one thing that I was interested to see out of this, Andrew, was the whole Zack Ertz thing. Like, if they had mandatories, would he have shown up, or would he have thought, you know what, I'm not going to be there, and take the fines? Like, that to me is probably the biggest story that would have come out of these mandatories here, is much like what's going on in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers not at the start of the 3-day minicamp. Would Zack Ertz? So do you think Zack Ertz would have showed up, or do you think he would have taken the fines?
I think Zack would have probably taken the fine.
And not shown up and just said, you know what, I'm going to wait for you guys to trade me? Like, do you feel there's no shot that he plays and comes back here?
I feel it's a very slim chance that he returns and plays the season here. I think that there's going to be a number of suitors late in the summer that are going to want his services. Zack, like I said, Zack can still play at a high level. He's coming off a down year, but it's going to be a very nice piece to a team that's close to contention. And getting a player like him who has such a knack for finding the zones, finding the soft spot in the zone, soft hands, just a smart player, very, very proficient route runner. Those type of players don't grow on trees. And I think that there's going to be some of those teams, possibly like we said, the Chargers and the like, that are going to, the Cardinals, the Panthers, that are going to be interested in his services.
All right, so a lot of rankings this time of the year. I want to get your take on a bunch of this stuff here. Andrew DiCecco, Football 4. Now, over at InsideTheBirds.com this week, you wrote about what's happening at left tackle, which we discussed a little bit on Friday, but you wrote about that this week. I want to go a little bit further because Pro Football Focus ranked the Eagles' offensive line unit as a whole as the 17th offensive line. And they said this is generally one of the top offensive lines in recent years, but the injuries have taken their toll, putting them in the middle of the pack. Let me get your take on where this unit, in your mind, can be if they stay healthy. If this group stays together, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Sayamala, Kelsey, and then whoever plays that left tackle spot, how good can this offensive line be?
Well, I think it can be one of the league's best if everyone stays healthy. And obviously there's going to be a big determining factor will be who wins that left tackle job. Right now, my vote would go to Jordan Mailata. He's recency bias perhaps, but we've seen what he can do. He looks like a player that's very much ascending, has a much higher ceiling, has the size, the tenacity, and just the overall. Just he plays to the mean streak, and he can handle a wide array of pass rushers. I mean, there's just a lot of upside with him. So I think that if you plug him in at left tackle, I mean, I do think that that's a very complete offensive line all the way through. And Jeff Stoutman, obviously, is the best offensive line coach in football. And It's a veteran offensive line. Outside of that, whoever wins that left tackle job, so I think it can be one of the league's best for sure.
Yeah, and you wrote about Dillard and Mailata over at InsideTheBirds.com. Dillard took 337 snaps as a rookie, missed all season due to injury. So I don't know that we know what he's going to be. I know we've talked a little bit about what you thought about him coming out of the draft, but he obviously has a new focus and said, I missed a whole season due to injury, never happened before, and now he has a new fire. So that'll be interesting. But what did you see from Mailata last year, who becomes a very interesting and intriguing part? Because if you found a left tackle in round number 7 who can play left tackle for the next, 10 years, that's a really fine. Mm-hmm. So what did you see from Mailata last year that is intriguing and exciting?
Well, I thought his footwork was very nifty for a big guy. I thought that when he kind of figured out what the opposition was doing as far as a pass rush approach, he was able to kind of counter that and figure that out. I know he's a guy that watches a lot of film, and that shows on the field. He got better each week, and he's just a very for a player who's only played the professional football, the game of professional football for 3 years. I mean, he looks remarkable. It's just a remarkable story of development. I mean, Jeff Stoutland's done a phenomenal job with him. But I also wrote, you got to give Mailata a lot of credit for putting in the practice time, both on the field and off the field in the film room, because last season at his 10 starts, he looked like you wouldn't be able to tell that he was just a few years removed from being a professional rugby player.
Andrew, I mean, and you wrote about the fact that he's 6'8", 346 pounds. I liken him to like Joel Embiid. Like, here's a guy 7'2", 280 pounds. He shouldn't be able to do some of the things he does. It's almost like Mailata is that gifted in terms of his athleticism and abilities at that size. It's like, did the Eagles kind of find, I don't want to say an all-pro level guy, but did they kind of, fall into a guy that might be, a 10-year player at that position after drafting Dillard in the first round?
Yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, when you take a player, I believe he went to 200, he was the 233rd overall pick in the 2018 draft. When you take a player like that, you're drafting a player on traits and potential upside. You're taking a flyer. And he had the measurables, the athletic traits that teams look for, and you figure, hey, we can pair him with a good offensive line coach. Let's see what this guy becomes. And I don't know that if they ever thought, maybe they thought, yeah, he can be a competent backup. I don't know if they ever envisioned him being a starting left tackle in year 4. But, I mean, here we are. I mean, and that's a credit to, like I said, Jeff Stoutland and the work that Jordan put in on and off the field, because it really is an incredible story of development.
By the way, what pick did you say he was?
I think he was 33.
Man, you nailed that one. 7th round, pick 233. Andrew DiCecco gets it right on the nose. Let me ask you about left guard. Do you think Seumalo is black markered in there, or is that an open spot, open competition? We know that word is big, competition. Mm-hmm. Is Landon Dickerson and Seumalo in a battle for left guard?
Well, you'd like to think that, because Nick Sirianni's preached the word competition, but a lot of it has to do with where Landon Dickerson's at as far as a physical standpoint. I don't know if the Eagles are going to want to rush him into that and give him, overload him with all these reps and everything. Kind of maybe want to gradually ease him into the flow of the professional ranks. I think early on it's going to be Seumalo's job to lose, and he'd be the player that if he starts to struggle on that line, becomes a weak link, then all of a sudden you might see Landon Dickerson and early in the season get a little bit of time in there, or possibly just overtake him. But I think it's going to be Isaac's job to lose.
By the way, the PFF rankings have the Eagles, as we mentioned, in the middle of the pack at 17. The worst offensive line in football, the New York Football Giants. So when we're talking about the NFC East, keep that in mind, right, Andrew? If your offensive line's a mess, your chances of having a solid season typically are not very good. Would you concur that the Giants have one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive line in football?
Yeah, it seems like perennially they have one of the worst offensive lines in football, along with Cincinnati Bengals, the Arizona Cardinals. There's a number of teams that are like that. The Minnesota Vikings. But yeah, like you said, offensive line is paramount to success. If you can have all of the All-Pro guys that you want from a skill player standpoint, but if your quarterback doesn't have time to get rid of the football and serve and see the field, and he's constantly running for his life and flushed out of the pocket, I don't know how successful you're going to be as an offense.
Yeah. By the way, Washington came in at 16, and interestingly enough, Dallas came in at number 6. Dallas was a team that had a lot of offensive line injuries last year. They finished 27th in offensive line rankings, but they think they're going to have a bounce. If Dallas has a good offensive line and you have Dak back, and I think their wide receiving core, which we'll get to, was the number 2 rated wide receiver, Dallas has the opportunity or the potential, Andrew, to have a very good offense this year.
Yeah, they do, and obviously health is going to be key with that because they struggle with that. And I think Dak Prescott is a very good quarterback. I think that he's shown that in his time that he's been out there. I think he showed tremendous growth in each year, and he just has a good command for that offense. I don't know that he's ever going to be in the MVP conversation, but he's just a very solid quarterback and sort of elevates the players around him. Now, they did a great job of putting a lot of pieces in there for that offense to go. And we don't really know. Ezekiel Elliott has a lot of mileage on him for such a young running back. I think he's 25 years old, but he's just really accumulated a ton of carries. And last season, he really was that offense. And you worry about the overuse there. You wonder how quickly that flame is going to sort of burn out. But, I mean, the pieces are there for them to have a really successful offense.
Philadelphia wide receiver room. PFF ranked them 30th in the league. That's basically third from the bottom. The only 2 teams they had ranked worse was Detroit and Houston. And they really did say, though, that there's plenty of room to improve for this unit. But if you, at the end of the year, Andrew, I say you had the 30th ranked wide receiver room, that's probably indicative that this group did not develop very much.
Yes, I think that's fair, but you have to look at guys like, that's not really surprising that they ranked all the way down there, but I mean, you have Jalen Reagor, who we've outlined was completely misutilized last season, didn't really play to standard when he did opportunity down the field, looked very much like a rookie, sort of fish out of water at times, and Travis Fulgham flashed, and then he sort of disappeared. He was dealing with an injury, and Greg Ward was their top receiver, and Greg Ward is a 10, 11-yard move the chains type of receiver. He's not a downfield threat. He's just more of a short area possession guy. I mean, and then I had a couple of rookies who were thrown in there, and John Hightower was thrown in there way earlier than he probably should have been, just given the amount of talent around him. I think he was kind of thrown in the deep end, and this seemed to be swimming, so to speak, and he lost his confidence, and then that opened the door for Quez Watkins to step in there, and he did all right in a limited capacity. So there's a lot of young players there and a lot of unknown variables, but I think this season their upside, and they have some upside. There's continuity there with wide receiver coach Aaron Moorhead. So we'll see what happens.
Let me ask you this. John Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who adds more?
Well, I think when you look at what John Hightower is, he's a speed guy, but Quez Watkins is also a speed guy. They don't have a lot of size, and I think that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, in theory, is the red zone guy that they need. And let's see what they can get out of JJ. I think he brings more. He brings more. There's what he has. The Eagles receiving core doesn't necessarily have. There's a lot of guys that can do what John Hightower can do, and he's also John Hightower's not that young. I think he's 25 years old. He came into the league at 24. I think Quez Watkins is a better version of John Hightower.
Are you a believer in Travis Fulgham?
Yes, because you don't do what he did for a month straight by accident, right? I mean, he was beating really high-level NFL defensive backs, finding openings against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are a very hard-nosed defense, the Ravens. I mean, he made some plays out there, and it wasn't like he was putting up these numbers against the Bengals secondary or anything like that. He was very impressive for a guy who plays sparingly with the Detroit Lions. He's a former 6th-round pick, discarded. Was on, I think the Eagles were his 3rd team last summer. So, I mean, he really stepped in there, and it's sort of like the light just came on for him, and he was in his zone, and he had that continuity with Carson Wentz. And then I think when Alshon Jeffrey came back, he sort of faded to the background, and he was also dealing with an injury. So I think that kind of all transpired right around the same time, which led to him sort of being a non-entity towards the season.
All right, so we think Zack Ertz is going to be gone. Part of the receiver room is the tight ends. You have Dallas Goedert. Kind of give me your thoughts on Goedert as a receiving threat next to Ertz. Who is a, you look at Ertz and say, Goedert can't be better than the best pass-catching tight end in Eagles history. But can he?
Yeah, I think he can, but health is going to be a prominent factor here with Dallas Goedert. He gets nicked up a lot. The way that he plays the game is a lot more physical and wears on your body a lot more than the way Zack Ertz played. Zack Ertz played a more finesse, but a savvier game where he didn't really expose himself to too many hits. He wasn't the blocker that Dallas Goedert is. He didn't really have a whole lot of after-the-catch production. Dallas Goedert's going to run through somebody, stiff-arm guys, attack the football in the air, be a red zone guy. That's his game. And when you play his style of game, his style of play, you're kind of going to expose yourself to some injuries. So I think the only thing holding him back is going to be, the injuries and things like that.
All right, these guys here, who intrigues you of this group? Jason Kroom, Tyree Jackson, Hakeem Butler.
None.
I thought you were going to give me Butler only because
if I had to pick one, I would say Hakeem Butler though.
You would go Butler of that group?
Yeah, if I had to pick one, but that's a motley crew trio of tight ends. I think they need to sign Richard Rodgers.
Yeah, it feels like Butler was a guy who was a wide receiver, big guy. I liked him a lot at Iowa State. It's a shame that
Me too, yeah.
He just hasn't really transformed into it. So that Eagles wide receiver room is interesting. You said Fulgham, and we'll leave with this. And God, there's so many notes on my page here that we never got to today, but such is life. Greg Ward. Does he have as big a role this year as he's had the last 2 years, or is he kind of phased out a little bit of this offense?
I think he's going to be phased out, Mike. I think by necessity he had a much bigger role because he was one of the only receivers that the quarterbacks could count on to get open, catch the football, move the chains. Greg Ward's a very, very technically savvy route runner, has a knack for finding the soft spots in the zone. He was a quarterback, obviously, so he sees the game a little bit differently. And I think that he had that familiarity, and he was always on the same page with the quarterback. So I think that's why he had such a big role. Now, I think they would like for Jalen Reagor to have a much larger role. Obviously, you have Devontae Smith now in the picture, who I think is going to be a volume guy, could have 70 catches if healthy. Travis Fulgham, I think, is going to be he's going to have a full season now, probably as a top 3 guy on that receiving core. So, there's other guys there. So I think Greg Ward is going to be more of a complementary piece than a focal point.
All right, I'll leave you with this because I haven't talked to you since the Julio Jones trade, but he's in Tennessee now. What does that do for that offense?
Oh, it completely – now you're going to see a less conservative Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has a good arm, a strong arm, and they really need to let him, take that offense to the next level and uncork some deep heaves down the field and take advantage of his strengths. Julio Jones is a strong wide receiver that can create separation down the field, come up with these contested catches. You have A.J. Brown there, obviously. They complement each other very well. And then they also have Josh Reynolds, who's going to play the slot. Josh Reynolds is a very underrated wide receiver as well. That was a good addition to their offense. I just think you're going to see a little bit more explosive Tennessee Titans offense that's not going to lean on Derrick Henry as much as they have in past years.
Should be interesting. I was going to say, this is a team that was just almost, I don't want to say strictly a running team, but heavily relied on the run. You probably see a lot better balance out of that team, and we'll see what their defense looks like. That's where they really got let down last year. So very intriguing trade with Julio Jones now in Tennessee. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. A new podcast drops Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Jeff Mosher is here tomorrow. Adam's here on Thursday, and Andrew's back on Friday. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. There's always football to talk about 24/7, 365, and we have it for you on Football at 4. Thanks, Andrew.
You got it, Mike. Take care.
All right, he's back on Friday. We'll do more NFL. The PFF rankings are out. Always fun to break them down. Take a look at what they think of the Eagles wide receivers now at 973ESPN.com.